Hello and welcome. I'm Bruce Rogers. I'm the Chief Insights Officer and Head of the CMO practice for Forbes Media. And welcome today's webinar, Publish or Perish, a CMO roadmap for managing, systematizing, and optimizing the marketing content supply chain. Before we begin, I just wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console, there are multiple application widgets you can use throughout the webcast. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can use the Q&A widget at the bottom. Those will be sent as emails to us, and we will promise to get back to you and answer your questions after the webinar. We also have a copy of today's slide deck. It's available in the resource list widget that looks like a green folder at the bottom of your screen. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the Maximize icon on the top right area or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. And if you have any technical difficulties, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. So today we are talking about brand publishing, which we define as the creation, management, and distribution of marketing and sales content at scale. And it's become essential to the future growth of literally every business today. And the challenge of effectively creating, managing, and distributing marketing content at scale has emerged as a critical issue on the executive agenda because marketing content is viewed as literally the lifeblood of modern marketing. In research that we've just conducted and which we will unveil throughout this presentation, over 90% of CMOs agree that their organizations must develop a publishing function in order to execute their growth agenda and manage the rising cost and complexity of content operations. And so we are going to walk you through this research, help you understand how to effectively create a marketing content operation that is both impactful and economical. So joining me today in this presentation to unveil the research that we've just brought to the marketplace, I'm pleased to have Stephen Diorio, who's the Chief Analyst for the Forbes CMO practice and the author of the research report, and Trish Shortell, who's a Managing Director at RSR Partners. Would you folks introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi, I'm Trish Shortell. I am with RSR Partners, and I am in the marketing services practice and focusing on senior hiring across the agency world, and then also on the client side, CMOs and direct reports to CMOs.
And I'm Stephen Diorio. I work with Bruce as Chief Analyst for the Forbes CMO practice. We, for the last year, have been working with CMOs to help solve this content problem and develop this research report.
Great. So for the past 6 months, our team has undertook a comprehensive research initiative based on a quantitative and qualitative survey of 380 marketing executives from around the world, as well as interviews with over 50 subject matter experts, and an in-depth analysis of over 1,000 marketing technology solutions with the ability to enable aspects of the brand publishing process, and an amazing amount of work and comprehensive perspective on this key aspect of marketing today. And in this webinar, we want to share findings from this in-depth best practices analysis to help CMOs and their direct reports on the steps they need to take to successfully simplify, streamline, and automate their publishing processes. And we'll highlight ways in which you can streamline the production, management, distribution, and optimization of marketing content, how to understand how and where technology can create leverage and scale in the enterprise publishing process, and communicate a vision and roadmap for making the transition to what we believe is critical to the future of marketing, a publishing model rather than a traditional advertising model. So here's our agenda for our conversation. We'll discuss how content has become critical to growth, how advanced sales and marketing programs are driving up the cost, complexity, and management time involved in creating, managing, and distributing and measuring marketing content, and how important it is for CMOs to adopt and adapt publishing practices into their marketing approaches if they really want to grow and succeed in today's world. Then we're going to show you the key points of leverage marketers want to focus their energies on to optimize their investments in sales and marketing content, and where and how technology can, and perhaps even more importantly, cannot help them simplify this whole process. So as my colleague here, Steve, said in the report, the new bottom line for marketers: if you want to grow, you better become a publisher. So let's talk about this first idea of optimizing marketing content operations and how it's become critical to everything on the CMO agenda. The creation, management of marketing and sales content at scale has become essential to the future growth of every business, as we said, and the challenges around creating and distributing and managing that process. Marketing content, which is really everything today from videos, white papers, collateral, articles, case studies, blogs, training resources, even if you can think about virtual and augmented reality communications assets, has become a large and growing, increasingly strategic part of the marketing budget. Because as we see here, virtually everything on the CMO growth agenda requires well-organized, well-targeted, and compelling content. When you look at this chart and see the growth investments CMOs are making, you need to also process just how content-intensive these marketing and sales programs are. Effective marketing content has become the fuel that runs modern digital, mobile, and social marketing systems, including digital marketing systems, mobile, and social marketing. Well-organized, actionable, and compelling marketing content is now critical to addressing some of the top-line growth agendas as we see here. Differentiating the customer experience, getting more growth from content and technology assets you already have, and creating deeper brand engagement. So the new bottom line is, if you want to grow, as we will say and reiterate here throughout this presentation, you need to change your paradigm from an advertising model to a publishing model. Certainly content marketing and sales enablement has now colliding in this bewildering array of technologies and opportunities. And for the CMOs that we talk to and that we have the great privilege and honor of spending time with, both for this report and throughout the year as part of our CMO practice, and you'll hear a lot from Trish later about her experiences with this as well. These are creating huge opportunities for some who are at the enlightened part of this process, and uncertainty for most, certainly. And when we started this, one of the key items that CMOs told us, and the refrain was, please help make our lives simpler. So that's what we set out to do, is simplify this process, create a strategy that's replicable for their organizations, and then help them simplify their process in picking the right technology that's going to maximize this opportunity for their specific business. So here you can see in this chart also the issues that are important to leading marketers around how marketing content impacts growth. And it's certainly, marketing content is effective to developing the brand at number one, improving sales effectiveness, executing targeted selling and marketing analytics strategies, leveraging social, differentiating the brand, selling value, executing multi-channel selling approaches, and reducing selling costs, all the things that are on the top of the agenda of marketers today. And as we had the opportunity to talk to leading marketers like John Costello, the President of Global Marketing and Innovation at Dunkin' Brands, who told us the quality and organization of marketing content is critical to achieving our goals, including branding, demand generation, sales, and employee engagement as well. So as a consequence, the CMO has become what we're calling a brand publisher. And as you can see here from this quote from Tim Velick, the CMO of Ricoh, content is hugely important to his organization. And as we found in the research, virtually everyone we surveyed, 93%, told us that the creation, management, and distribution of marketing content is a primary responsibility for the marketing organization, and with the CMO at the helm of that responsibility. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Steve to take us through the rest of the agenda. Steve?
Thanks, Bruce. So now I would like to turn to a fundamental challenge that the study surfaced. So what we learned is that the big challenge that CMOs are facing as they deploy advanced marketing and sales enablement programs is that almost everything that's important to growing the business increases the volume, cost, and complexity of their content operations. That's because all the social media, digital marketing, and sales enablement programs that Bruce just talked about in the prior section all require more personalized content elements, more customer touch points, more targeting personas, more content elements, and more personalization in general. So one of the big findings from the study is that if marketers really want to grow profitably, they're going to have to figure out how to optimize their content operations and fundamentally reduce the cost, complexity, and management time involved in producing and managing the volume of content and the quality of content they're going to need to grow in a modern sales and marketing environment. For example, we talked to David Master, who's Chief Marketing Officer of the Janus Capital Group, and he says managing content effectively is the single greatest challenge to our marketing organization. But it's what we must do to survive as a contemporary marketing organization. So what we learned is that the complexity, inefficiency, and ineffectiveness of marketing content has emerged as a real pain point for chief marketing officers. The most common problems cited in the interviews we had with executives included low content usage. And what we heard was that if business runs on the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, in many cases, when it comes to content, the rule is more like 99.9 to 0.01%. In fact, the VP of digital marketing at Cisco found that 0.01% of their content on Cisco.com was engaging customers, and it was a long tail after that. They're also worried about the time and effort it takes to make good quality, well-organized content and find it. For example, our recent survey with Forbes found that 61% of executives said it's difficult for salespeople to find marketing content when they need it, which is a big pain point. And lack of alignment. Overall, half of marketers that we surveyed were not aligning their content with the customer journey or the buying process. And the big issue is this content driving sales? And in fact, 40% of the marketing executives that we talked to aren't sure they're getting a positive return on their growing investments in marketing content in terms of brand building and lead generation. So these content problems have become major business issues, which is why we wrote this report. And given these nearly universal facts, marketing executives are asking two big questions. Why is it so hard to managing marketing content? And what can we do to improve the situation? Well, to start, the first step to solving this content and complexity problem is to understand what's causing the problem in the first place. So in doing our research, we started to uncover the core drivers of content cost and complexity. And we found that there are about 10 underlying factors that CMOs need to understand to define the problem so that they can solve it. So we've already talked about the top two. Advanced marketing approaches require more content. Therefore, the demand for quality, effective content is rising. But if you look deeper, the structure of content is strange. Content is not a widget. It's not properly organized and tagged and modularized the way it needs to be if we're actually going to create what people call a content factory. So we're dealing with something that's not a widget, yet we're trying to optimize. In addition, we're learning that there are more internal and external people writing content, For the average $5 billion company, which was the size of the people we surveyed, we found that there were on average 150 people creating content, and many of them, or most of them, don't even report to the CMO. Content is produced in silos. Product people create product content. Social people create social content. Sales enablement people create sales enablement and training content. None of this rides under one organization. And a big issue is that there are no clear business objectives for what content optimization is trying to drive in terms of customer experience, top-line sales growth, cost to sell, speed to market. And the publishing process doesn't sit under marketing. It crosses many functions, agencies, corporate communications, products, sales. And so we need some type of a cross-functional process to manage all these. And in fact, nobody really owns the publishing processes at most organizations, which is what Bruce is talking about. Becoming a publisher means someone's got to take ownership of the end-to-end process, including marketing, but beyond marketing. And finally, CMOs complain that governing content in a large, complex, global organization is almost impossible at scale. So you've got to pick your spots. So the chart on the right illustrates this problem and what we're facing. The cost and complexity of content is going to rise dramatically. If I take one core branded content assets and I add personas, writing to different people, customized content elements, writing to different cells or modules inside Marketo or Salesforce.com or Adobe. If I add different languages or localization and different channels, blogs, email, social, sales enablement, CRM, as you can see, this content cost can rise dramatically, and in some cases by over 30%. So to illustrate this, Rishi Dave has a great quote. Rishi is the CMO of Dun & Bradstreet, and he basically says, the big issue with personalization is that, yes, it does drive a better experience, and it drives some lift, but once you create a personalized website, the amount of content that you need to create multiplies incredibly. It takes a lot of work, a lot of content work, in order to get ready for one-to-one personalization. So when Cisco implemented a personalized website experience and persona-based targeting on Cisco.com, the amount of content they needed increased by this order of magnitude. According to their VP of Digital Marketing, who we interviewed, pursuing personalized web experiences has improved our marketing performance, but it's also created simultaneously a big burden in terms of content. Once we started to personalize our web experience, we saw improvement in client response, but it created a huge upstream problem. We increased the number of different personalized content elements from 3 to 10, and by introducing 3 simple audience personas, customers, employees, and partners, we increased the volume of content needed to support our site 30-fold. And the pressure on the content team to update the website every 4 hours instead of every week. So if you take a look at this, if I have a $100 content asset, branded asset, governed and controlled by the marketing center, and I add personas, I'm adding costs, and I'm also adding a number of assets. Let's say that I break that into pieces so I can feed content elements using a web CMS system, a marketing cloud system that allows me to move things around and feed different templates. That adds even more cost and more elements. And let's say we want to market in 5 countries in 5 languages. Localizing that content can add even more cost and expense. So at the end of the day, what you're seeing is that the aggregate cost of content to support personalized digital marketing programs is growing. So the big thing we want to tackle in the rest of this webinar, and the whole focus of the Publish or Perish report, is how we can drive this cost down so that we can sustainably create the content we need to feed the growth programs that are going to drive the top line. So now I'd like to hand it off to Trish to talk about what this means to a CMO in terms of their career and their growth programs.
Thanks, Steve. I would say that the priority for CMOs and for boards and companies and management is really looking at content. And it's not just the ownership of content and the management of content and the development of content, but even just the recognition that this is driving business today, and someone within the organization needs to own this. It is the highest demand request that we get from a recruitment perspective is for content and publishers, in-house publishers. So it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think that what we're seeing is that it is so massive, people don't know how to define the roles, where to look for talent, what kind of talent to bring in. And there are new things that are surfacing within this development of content. We have clients who are coming to us asking us if there are such roles as content archivists for the 2016 world of what content is becoming for corporations. So many of these roles are being defined as we go. The CMOs are taking the reins. The CMOs are best positioned in the organization to be responsible for the content and publishing development that's moving forward rapidly. And really, as you know, CMOs have been defined as brand architects. I would go further and say that in this content-driven world, they are becoming the brand guardians, in large part because everything is moving so fast, and anyone can publish anything about your brand. You know, as we look at some examples in recent past, I think that the Domino's pizza video prank, where two employees went in and videotaped themselves in one of their kitchens and distributed it and went viral, is a perfect example of how companies need to have people who are going to be brand guardians. This is the top demand today coming from the CMOs, the CEOs, and quite honestly, the board level. As we look at the reasons brand publishing is critical to the success of the CMO, as Bruce mentioned earlier, 93% of the CMOs surveyed agreed that their organizations must develop publishing and content development functions in order to support a corporate growth agenda. Content is driving growth. There is no question about this. It is the #1 accelerator for business today. Speed to market, as we look at that, can be a double-edged sword. Everyone's demanding content, 24/7, immediate reaction, immediate response, reaction again. And this can be absolutely a double-edged sword. People can get to market too quickly. The market can become oversaturated with too much content or irrelevant content, and that's something that the CMOs are painfully aware of, more aware of than anybody else, quite honestly, within the organization. Content is going to define the brand and the context for the organization. Return on investment, management of time, and I think that the real crux is the customer experience. And the CMOs get this more than anyone else. The line from content to customer experience, and in some cases vice versa, is what drives the business. I've looked at some of the work that Canon has done recently, in recent years, specifically their recent work called Rebel Without a Cause, which is all about taking consumers and bringing them into the conversation, bringing their stories in, and conveying that again to engage other consumers. This is all about the life cycle of content. I think what Old Navy has done from a content development standpoint has been genius. And this actually is something that we're going to pay attention to. They've gone outside of the traditional channels and have sought talent in other industries and have brought them in, mainly in entertainment. The work with Amy Poehler, I think, has been fantastic. And that was content development that was coming from a very different place. We're going to see more of that as we move on in the next couple of years. Diversity of thought will be key. Marketers who do not become publishers put their plans, their growth plans at risk. I would offer you the thought that if you are a company of any size, scale, in any industry, in any part of the world, you are a publisher. And so it's those marketers that are not actively managing their content who are putting their growth plans at great risk. Alternatively, those who are seeing a great advantage not only in their messaging but in their companies, in their results, in the engagement with their consumers.
That's great, Trish. So at the end of the day, marketers aren't going to be able to write or spend their way out of this content problem. They're going to have to change. They're going to have to become publishers. As your partner, Brad McLean, who's also serves the marketing world, puts it, CMOs that don't make the transition from marketing to publisher in terms of the 7 C's, content, curation, community, commerce, culture, building the right capabilities, and be able to communicate, are putting their growth strategies and their careers at risk. So fundamentally, what we were taught in business school in our marketing classes about the 4 P's of marketing are now evolving towards what Brad calls the 7 C's of brand publishing. So now what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about what CMOs can do about it. How can they shift this cost, complexity, and time curve, the fundamental economics of content, in their favor? And so what I'd like to discuss is that when we did this research, we uncovered the key points of control, leverage, and scale in the publishing process that marketers can use to get control. So let's start with the publishing process. It's pretty simple. You produce content, you manage it, target it, you distribute it through sales, marketing, and media channels, and you measure how it was consumed, whether it drove impact, what people thought of it, and what else you should be saying, and you start the process all over again. The key challenge is, A, to think about it like a process, and B, re-engineer the process. For example, we talked to Connie Weaver, who's the CMO of TIAA-CREF, and what she said was the pressure to differentiate the brand, to use more channels, and manage complexity is growing so fast to the point that doing business the same way simply doesn't work. Our current processes will not scale. We have to adapt and re-engineer this process. And Lisa Arthur, who's Chief Marketing Officer of Teradata Marketing Applications, puts it, we need to move from an outdated advertising model that we all knew to a publishing model. So what are the key points of leverage in the process? Well, our research, surveying over 300 marketers as well as over 100 experts, identified 7 key points of leverage, 7 things that the Chief Marketing Officer has to get right in terms of competencies, people, process, and technology in order to take control of the situation. So the first one is planning. Leading marketers are putting in place editorial structures to efficiently plan content that supports the customer journey. The second one was sourcing. We're getting content from 150 places. Marketers are putting in sourcing models to source and create content at scale in a digital age. And the third was targeting. Has how to target and organize your content so it can be found, it's impactful, it's effective, and it's able to drive personalization. And then there was this notion of governance. We can't control everything, but what tools and levers can we use in terms of skills, people, processes, and software to get some control over content in a complex, changing, and global organization? An advanced concept with this notion of assembly. How do I make 100 content elements that can be assembled into 10,000 different personalized content experiences? And distribution, we've heard about it. We've identified 4 primary media touch points, 4 digital marketing-owned touch points, but also sales and service matters too. $400 conversations are happening in call centers, face-to-face, and in post-sale service. So how do I manage distribution of content across all those? And then finally, how do I understand, measure, and manage the economics of content operations and its impact on the top line, the bottom line, the client experience, and a differentiation. So how do we move this curve? Louis Dvorkin, who's the Chief Product Officer of Forbes, conducted a transformation inside Forbes. He wrote a book about it. He said some interesting things. In order to shift the content cost and performance curve, marketers are going to have to build management systems for a new era of marketing, or what he calls brand publishing or brand journalism. This will require eliminating restrictive editing layers, replacing outdated organizational structures, and leveraging technologies. Marketers are going to have to put in place scalable systems for sourcing, managing, and distributing content that supports hundreds of staff writers, or in your case, your employees, thousands of contributors in terms of creators, or millions if you listen to Trish and you think about customers creating content who transact with your content. So the trick is, how do I move this curve? Well, we got some data from Luxus Draftforce, who is a content services organization, and they were able to move their clients to a completely different cost and complexity curve by employing several of these key points of leverage that we discussed in the report. For example, they were able to use modularized content elements, breaking it into pieces or Lego blocks so it could be more easily assembled and tailored to the needs of channels, local markets, and customers. They automated content production workflow with a content marketing platform. They systematized the notion of language translation with language translation services and middleware and processes so they could actually break core marketing assets into dozens of languages in a reasonably cost-effective fashion. And they mass-customized content templates so that they could be easily configured to suit the needs of channel partners. So as the chart shows above, they've been able to sustainably reduce the cost of personalizing, versioning, and localizing marketing content by over 50% with high degrees of control and consistency across channels and marketing. Jussi Wacklin, who is a senior marketing director of one of their customers, EMC, basically said, now we're able to create and adapt marketing materials to local needs, lightning fast, while keeping expenses under control. So the whole purpose of the Publisher Parish Research Initiative is we want to teach marketers that these are not isolated results. In fact, 80% of the CMOs that we interviewed report they've already started the process of working with their peers in IT, human resources, finance, and sales to establish editorial structures and systems to support the creation, management, and distribution of content. The Publisher Parish Report explains how leading marketers are systematically using the 7 key points of leverage to make a progression of improvements in marketing content operations, from easy to difficult. Collectively, these competencies allow marketers to source, manage, and distribute content faster, using less budget, less management time, and achieve better returns on investment in terms of growth, utilization of their marketing technology, and an improved customer experience. So to wrap up, we'd like to talk about how technology can help. And one of the things we learned is there is a rich and dynamic array of technology solutions that's emerging to help executives automate, streamline, and simplify the enterprise publishing process. In fact, half of the marketing executives we surveyed are investing in technology to support these processes. And many of them have successfully used technology to systematize these leverage points: planning, sourcing, targeting, governance, assembly, and distribution. So the first thing that marketers need to think about is that they have to choose their spots wisely. There are 3 realities CMOs and their IT partners need to realize as they embark on the quest to streamline and automate the publishing process. First, there are way too many technologies to choose from. Second, no single solution provider can support the end-to-end publishing process. In fact, I'll show you, we're going to span about 25 magic quadrants or technology categories in order to support the process I'm showing you here today. And most importantly, not every aspect of the publishing process can be automated. because it involves humans, emotions, creativity, and soft skills. So let's start with the fact that there are way too many technologies out there to automate the content process. This is the MarTech view of the world. There are literally thousands of point solutions that inform or improve the marketing process, that touch the content process. This is way too many technologies for the CMO to process. In fact, Sean Burns, who's SVP of Digital at Schneider Electric, described the situations that CMOs see themselves in as they try to navigate this sea of solutions. They could take a meeting every single day from a marketing technology vendor. It's a huge commitment of time and a distraction. Instead, he spends time with his customers, looking at what they're doing, how they consume and value content as part of their decision-making process. If, in fact, technology can improve their customer experience in some way, then the need will become apparent, and you can work with your partners in IT to find a solution. So there are 710 technology analysts out there, and they're not making life for the CMO much simpler easier. Our analysis, pictured here in this eye chart, is that it actually takes 25 different technology categories to support our simple 4-step brand publishing process that we've outlined for you today. That means you have to read 25 Gartner Magic Quadrants or 25 Forrester Waves to get a perspective on how and where technology can and cannot simplify and streamline the process. That's way too complex for marketing executives who need to establish a roadmap for how technology can support growth, enhance the client experience, and reduce this cost and complexity. So our view tries to simplify it. We take the viewpoint that if we can enable these 7 key points of leverage in the process, that's the best way to assess what technologies to deploy and who to partner with. And this also allows marketers to probably better leverage the technology ecosystem they already have in place. When we surveyed executives about the core technologies, CRM, content marketing, databases, publishing platforms, half of them had many of the ingredients necessary to enable this process, and they weren't getting an adequate return or making this technology work with them to the end of making this process work better. So what we're trying to do in this report is allow an executive to lay out a technology roadmap for enabling publishing over time across the enterprise and help prioritize current and prospective sales and marketing infrastructure partners that they want to work with. So let's go a level deeper. So we talked about the 7 key points of leverage in the process. Our analysis actually breaks down the key functions in software you already have or software you want to consider that's going to enable the process. For example, in terms of planning and editorial, there are content marketing platforms, audience intelligence platforms, topic modeling tools, and content coverage heat maps. Those are the features and capabilities that are going to help you better plan content. And for sourcing, there are production platforms, sourcing networks. The report walks you through step by step how technology enables these processes with examples of what technologies are working and which marketers are using them. This plays itself out into an ecosystem and a ranking. We rank the top 100 best-of-breed brand publishing solutions that can systematize the brand publishing process. To arrive at these solutions, we use some rigorous criteria. First, customer adoption. What's working? What are customers using? Who is actually adopting these things? And we found some small companies that were quite popular with marketers because they worked. We also looked at their focus. A lot of the companies out there today are focused on data and analytics and content as a sideline. We looked for organizations who are dedicated resources to a product roadmap dedicated to content operations. And that actually separates a lot of these firms. And we looked at their ability to meaningfully reduce the cost and complexity of content operations, as well as who is partnered with best-of-breed capabilities. Because at the end of the day, it's going to take an ecosystem. And if these pieces work well together out of the box, that makes a difference. So what did we find out? Well, we found out that there was a whole raft of solutions that can help us plan content. These are audience intelligence platforms, topic modeling platforms, social listening platforms. And there's a ton of solutions that can help us source content, from sourcing and discovery and curation platforms to marketplaces to find journalists like Scripted, writers like Xeris, or art or video. And of course, there are licensing platforms that let you get access to licensed images efficiently and plug them into the system. And from a production standpoint, there were a number of folks who can help create long-form documents and static documents, but also video. And one of the more interesting findings was that there's a whole new breed of platforms called interactive content, like SnapApp and Cirrus, that are becoming very popular in terms of engaging clients in a better visual and online experience. The management category is huge. It ranges from localization solutions like Lionbridge or DraftHorse, who we mentioned earlier, who can help you streamline the process of breaking your content into 20, 30, or 40 different languages. Also, there's an emerging category called content quality control. Organizations are starting to use software to audit, analyze, and proactively improve their content quality. Firms like Acrolinks, and Active Standards. There are a new breed of digital asset management firms like Adams Software and Celum are very popular in terms of making an impact in terms of managing digital content assets across many channels. And distribution is a big problem. There are many media players, from native advertising like OneSpot and Outbrain to branded thought leadership channels like BrightTalk and SlideShare. The usual suspects in terms of social media publishers are also in this category. In terms of owned digital channels, there are the blog platforms, social relationship platforms, and marketing cloud platforms. An important channel is the sales and service channel. E-commerce is increasingly important in terms of delivering personalized content experiences. Firms like SAP Hydrus and Magento have distinguished themselves in terms of being good at delivering those experiences. And CRM and sales enablement are important. A company like Seismic does wonderful things in terms of assembling content at the point of sale, so it's incredibly relevant and on the mark. And Salesforce.com has become a primary platform for the delivery of content experiences to sales. And finally, in terms of measurement, there's a plethora of technologies that can track consumptions, provide audience intelligence, and increasingly develop reporting dashboards for the CMO, Tableau being among the leaders in that area. Finally, after all this analysis, we arrived at a rough dozen firms who are best qualified to enable the end-to-end publishing process across the enterprise. What we mean by this is that they have a capability to support planning, sourcing, targeting, governance, content assembly, content distribution across sales, marketing, and media channels, and measurement to some degree. The way they do this is a range of 6 to 12 different application suites supported by best-of-breed partnerships with many of the top 100 firms on the prior page. So we started with well over 1,000 technology companies, and we arrived at a rough dozen who are truly able and experienced and committed to enabling content processes across the organization. And they come in different flavors. There are content marketing platforms like Contently, Kapost, NewsCred, Oracle, and Percolate. These solutions focus on optimizing content operations at scale, and they have strengths in content planning, sourcing, management, distribution, and measurement. The marketing cloud players can also support the end-to-end process with this range of solutions as well as some very smart partnerships. These solutions are great at delivering highly effective, targeted, multi-channel campaigns that leverage both data and content to deliver personalized content experiences. The leading players profiled in our report are Adobe, HubSpot, IBM, Marketo, Oracle, Salesforce.com, Sitecore, and STL, as well as Teradata. And many of these organizations offer web CMS solutions which are at the backbone of many of the content governance and operations in these organizations. To select these partners, they're all a little bit different. You have to ask yourself questions. How well does their approach support our business model? How well does their solution support our customer focus? How does it align with our go-to-market approach? How does it fit and integrate with our existing marketing and sales technology stacks? We address all of these issues in the report and give you vendor selection tools to help you make these decisions. So to wrap up, all the technologies and solutions we mentioned today are cataloged in the Publish and Perish report, and they are ranked in the Forbes Top 100 Brand Publishing Technologies, as well as providing you vendor selection guidance to help you sort, rank, and prioritize their roadmap. I'd like to give it back to Bruce to wrap up and tell you more about the report.
Well, Steve, thank you. We've covered an amazing amount of ground, a lot of perhaps concepts that might be relatively new to you, or certainly helping you put the world in perspective in perhaps a different way, in which we're putting the puzzle together in maybe a way that you hadn't seen before, or filling in some of those missing pieces. What we found in the research along the way is that this is a journey, and virtually no organization that we talked to had this process completely figured out, and they were all on their way to trying to do that, and just some are more ahead than others. So we urge you to get more information about this critical part of the marketing process by downloading our report, by going to forbes.com/CMO-practice. And to learn more, you certainly can reach out to either Steve or myself, and as you see, you have ways to contact us, and you can reach out to me either through email or Steve email, or even through my connect to me through my Twitter handle or through LinkedIn. And I did want to thank Trish Shortell from RSR, who added her unique insights on how she is helping organizations place senior marketing executives into organizations who are at the forefront of this process and who really understand how to manage and operationalize content in a way that's effective for their organizations. So we are starting to see a new breed of senior marketing executives and CMOs who have successfully moved from that advertising paradigm of the old world to the new world of brand publishing. So with that, I thank you all for joining us, and please make sure you have sent us your questions. As we said, we will endeavor to answer all of them. And thank you for your time, and thank you for joining our presentation.